what emotional selection says is that the mind really kind of has the same problem. It makes modifications and design changes to the way it interprets or perceives the world, but are those changes really adaptive? And so the only way it can be known for certain is to actually test it before it uses it live. So the schemas are modified while we sleep. And then how would you test these schemas? Well, you would have a dream that would recreate the situation in which the schemas were being modified to cope with. And if you process the dream well, which doesn't mean that you're not frightened, if you may be frightened during a dream of being in a fire, but if you can control your fear and act accordingly in a constructive way, then that's a sign that your schemas are working well and that those prior modifications would be adopted. But if you're paralyzed with fear during a dream, then that's a chance that your schemas are not performing well and that you'll have similar dreams in the future as your mind continually modifies those schemas. And that's true of really any dream theme you could think of. When you start thinking of them as tests, it's really quite easy to see the schemas that they would be testing. One of the interesting is, well, how would a pleasant dream be considered as a test? And the answer is that a lot of people have trouble with coping with happiness. People with alcoholism and substance abuse problems will often sabotage their happiness because they don't feel that they deserve to have good things happen to them. So if you have a pleasant dream and you fully embrace the dream and enjoy it for what it is, then that's a sign that your schemas are well equipped to cope with happiness. There are many reports of flying dreams where people couldn't get off the ground, or when they became self-conscious, they fell to the ground, and that's an example of the schemas not being coping well with the happiness experienced during the dream. Lucid dreams are dreams where you actually know that you're dreaming. I say that as part of this theory that lucid dreams are not good. That for a dream to be an effective test, a REM dream to be an effective test, you must experience it as an actual event. If you realize that you're dreaming and that it's only a dream, then that eliminates the ability or the effectiveness of the test. And I know there's a lot of lucid dreamers out there who cultivate their ability to have lucid dreams, and I think that's a very dangerous thing to do. You really want to experience a dream as an actual event. So many observation with dreams. Dreams tend to not be remembered. We dream at least 2 hours a night, and yet we typically don't remember the contents of most or all of our dreams. And that's really quite a simple explanation. When you buy an automobile, there were maybe 40,000 tests that occurred in the making of that automobile, but you don't need to know what those tests are. You just need to know that that automobile is safe and does what it was intended to do. And likewise, we don't need to know what our dreams are. They're tests that are modifying our mind, and it doesn't really we don't need to know what they are. And so on those occasions we actually remember them, they're more happy accidents than anything intentional. Repeat dreams are quite often experienced where people have similar dream themes over and over again, or even sometimes the identical dream theme over and over again. And that's really just an example of the mind continually working on the same set of schemas, and sometimes these modifications can take some months or years to develop. And if improvement is happening, what you will find is that you're more and more able to cope with the scenario of the dream. That when you were a child and you had a certain dream, or a young adult, then you may have been terrified during a certain dream, but later in your life you find that when you have the same dream, you actually process it a lot easier. And that's an example of how your schemas are improving. And eventually, once your mind is satisfied that those schemas are satisfactory, those dream themes will stop and you'll move on to another concern. There's a lot of dreams. Most of our dreams tend to be social, where we're dreaming about other people, but some dreams, such as falling or being attacked, tend to be non-social, but they do test to evaluate our self-image, specifically who we are. Are we a strong person? Are we capable of keeping our wits about us during times of crisis? And that helps us during a social environment. So most or all of our genes tend to be social in content, even though they may not appear social. So in conclusion, Darwin described quite nicely a cyclical process that occurred during the evolution of humans in their brains and minds. His cycle describes variation as natural selection. And what I'm saying is his cycle takes us up until when we're born, and then the cycle of accommodation followed by emotional selection picks up there, and throughout a lifetime our mind continues to evolve. So our mind has evolved over millions of years, and then after we're born it continues to evolve, and obviously not on a genetic level, but certainly on a neurological level, as new connections are forming, as schemas evolve. So that's my in a nutshell, my theory of emotional selection. I hope you enjoyed this talk. If you have more questions, again, please feel free to check out the paper or write a comment below, and I'll be happy to respond to it. There's more information at emotionalselection.org, and thanks again.